It's the Anfield Wrap after the resurgent Reds battered Brighton and made it 16 points from 18 since defeat at Spurs in October and rose to fourth in the Premier League. So joining me, Gareth Roberts, to have a chat about that is Paul Senior, Dan Austin, and Goals Liverpool reporter Melissa Reddy. That was a nice professional opening, wasn't it, Paul?
I'm just some knobhead that runs a bar. I don't get a title.
Yeah, Death Row
Soz
Diners.
Soz about you, Mel, eh?
Dan never got a title never, lad. You know what I mean?
He's in enough trouble.
Crack on with your mad ego there. With hindsight then, who should I start with? Who's looking at me? Mel. Mel was looking at me there, so Mel can talk first. With hindsight then, Mel, we all know it's all worked and we can all pretend we never thought any different. But how did you feel? 2 o'clock-ish. Team comes out, you're trying to work out the formation, you're wondering what's going on, and even when they take to the pitch, a formation and a lineup that's unfamiliar to everyone, Liverpool, Brighton, and the wider watching world.
Yeah, when you looked at the team, you could ascertain, I think, immediately that Emre Can was going to play centre-back, which I think everyone was okay with because he's played there before, given the situation Liverpool found themselves in. There was not much you can do, and he's actually got qualities that, are quite useful off a centre-back. And then when the match starts and you looking at how they're set up and you see it's a three-man centre-back line with Gini Wijnaldum on the left off Dejan Lovren.
For the first time in his life.
Yeah, and Emre on the right, then you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's going on here? And, Gini looked confused by it. Brighton were utterly perplexed. They certainly weren't expecting that. And I think, it's fair enough because Ginny came out afterwards and admitted that he was a bit nervous because he wasn't quite sure when to do what. But he grew into the game. I thought Emre and Lovren did quite well together. And actually, if you looked at the way Brighton were going to set up, and if, they're so obstructive, and that is inherently their priority in a game to be so hard to play against. Having 2 attacking midfielders as centre-backs wasn't the worst idea in the world, given how they were going to set up. But yeah, it worked out pretty well in the end because, with that attack, sometimes it just doesn't matter what's happening behind them.
So when Wijnaldum in defence was a bit mad, wasn't it, Paul? And he said later on, or Klopp said later on, that he only had basically 20 minutes to practice. And there was a few moments, wasn't there? I thought he was a bit liberal with his back passes at times and things like that. But that's understandable, isn't it, in the circumstance? And I think Liverpool have a chance early on, don't they? But I think up until that sort of, is it 80 seconds or something that they end up getting 2 in around the half-hour mark, it wasn't really hinting at being a classic. Like, Liverpool were doing all right, but like Mel says, sort of Brighton's tactics and how they were setting up, and the fact that, Glenn Murray's their only real sort of attacker outlet, if you like. I think until that little spell, you weren't certain that it was going to be. You said you weren't talking about fives at that point.
No, you weren't. The formation thing obviously catches you by surprise, and I don't think anyone looking at the shit. I think everyone presumes it's going to be a back four with just Can in, and then it's obviously it's apparent from the first minute that Gini's playing left side of this defence, but is obviously stepping out and supporting the midfield a little bit. So that bit completely threw me. I think I spent the first 10 minutes of the game actually just in WhatsApp groups trying to arguing with people who were telling me that they're playing 4 at the back, and I don't think anyone really had a handle on it until about 20-25 minutes of actually what was going on. Then Liverpool sort of after that time, it's a non-event really. The first 20 minutes, I think Liverpool are quite happy to feel the game out a little bit, let everyone's nerves settle down with what's sort of going on around them, and I think by then you sort of realise Dejan Lovren's almost playing sweeper to a second midfield, and it worked. And I thought I quite enjoyed seeing the manager tactically tested in such a way as well. I think that's something I sort of took away from it, was that he really had very little to pick from there and found a way in. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't look the hardest game on paper, but it's an away game against the sides who've come up last year winning loads of games at home. I think if they got any momentum,
not getting battered either.
No,
I
they're
mean,
not.
I think last 14 they've conceded 14, something like that. So obviously average one a game. It's not like people are doing them 4, 5.
no, they're
6
not. They're not
every
whipping
week.
boys at all. And I think going into the game, but he's like 10th, 9th, 10th in the league, something like that. So they certainly weren't whipping boys. I've got a lot of respect for the job Chris Hughton's doing there as well. I think he hasn't spent tons of money. He's kept faith in a lot of the same lads that brought them up. You've got lads like Dunk and Shane Duffy and stuff who they've found a level, and that'll, in my opinion, will probably keep them up as well. So it wasn't the easiest game, but not the hardest on paper. So to go with that defence, I was surprised. Clavin was on the bench, and we must have been in a bit of a state not to have gone. Can you just not do an hour here or whatever?
6 days ill apparently.
So yeah, but it worked. I thought we were good. We got a 5-1 result, but as you said from the beginning of the game, I didn't see that coming.
I mean, these aren't to be sniffed at, are they, Dan? Because not so long ago, and Klopp made the point of bringing this up really in the press conference as well. These were sides that the type of sides that Liverpool were dropping points against. Some people saying Liverpool can't get through. Sides that sort of just park the bus and make it difficult for them and all the rest of it. And he's trying different things now, which is interesting as well. There's a lot of talk about his rotation, 6 changes again, some of those obviously enforced. But also, he's trying different formations now. He's trying different things. There was a safer thing to do there than do the Wijnaldum thing. But it's almost like, well, the way we win a game is we get our attacking lads on the ball and we score goals. And that's ultimately what he did. But he's not just going 4-3-3 every week is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's changed the shape. And it's a different shape to the one that he was using in the Stoke match and a different shape again to the one that he was using in the Chelsea match. So in a week there, they've played 3 different ones. I don't think Brighton played in quite the same way or set up in quite the same way that some teams did last season against Liverpool, where they were very much just going to sit there and say to Liverpool, break us down. I thought Brighton, at least in the first half, tried to play a bit more than that. Up until Liverpool scored, they had probably the best chance of the game as well with Glenn Murray. I think Brighton had an interest in winning the game, as we pointed. I don't think they were going to do sort of what Huddersfield did when they came to Anfield and just basically sit there and go, all right, try and beat us. But I thought that was then interesting in the way that he went with it, because I know we're talking about Wijnaldum playing in defence, but I don't think he really did. I don't really think any of them did, aside from Lovren. I know that nominally you'd call that either a 3 at the back or a 5 at the back, but I think we had one defender. I think we had one defender all day. I don't think I would say that Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Chan or Wijnaldum were actually playing as defenders, really, because from what it looked like to me, he was basically saying, right, we're going to control the football. We're going to press them. We're going to keep them high up the pitch, play basically on the halfway line. And then if anything goes over the top or if anything goes around the sides, we've got sort of a sweeper there in the shape of Lovren. So I don't think it was...
Did you think it felt like 2 midfields? Because I
yes, that's my point. It felt like what I would call it would be more like a 1-4...
4-1. Yeah, that's what I
something like that, or a 1-4-3-2. Yeah. Something like that,
Depends where you're putting Salah.
But I wouldn't actually say I thought Gini Wijnaldum was a centre-back, because he didn't do an awful lot of defending, and it's not just because Brighton weren't giving him an awful lot to do. It was because of the position on the pitch. He was deeper than what he would normally be, but he wasn't as deep as what you would expect Matip or Klavan or Gomez or whoever to normally be when we play a 4 at the back.
It was quite fluid, and in a sense, I think one of the things that I was most pleased with is that though Liverpool had to do something so different, that they were still brave enough to be so fluid and with it, because I think, for somebody especially like Wijnaldum, when you're given a new task to do that's completely alien to you, your natural instinct is to want to, be protective, or you want to take as least risk as possible that you can do, because it is something new. But I think Liverpool played with a lot of bravery, and speaking about the start of the game, I think for the first 29 minutes it was a test of patience, and Klopp referenced prior to the game, and he referenced patience again afterwards, because I think in these sort of games, that is the platform you have to build on, because if you can do that, if you can just stay patient, you've got such potency in attack that very, very few, if any, teams in the league are capable of properly dealing with. And I think they did that to to perfection yesterday. It was interesting because, at the start of the game, you see a few players getting frustrated with each other. Henderson telling Coutinho to make the run. Coutinho saying, "Give it to my feet, and then I'll, take it on, and then we can do something." Robertson also getting told to go on the overlap when he was. So, Brighton's original plan worked a little bit because while they were trying to be patient, they were getting frustrated a little bit. And Dan's right, they did have the best chance of the game. But I think once Liverpool score, it just puts a completely different complexion on things, because then they know, okay, we've done the hard part now, and now we can start to do what we want to do.
When we were doing the preview shows, Gareth, of the game, that we did a phone call with a Brighton fan, and his biggest concern was that if Liverpool score first, that they would go and score again quickly, and he was proved absolutely right. It's almost like Brighton need a full reset after a goal, a little bit like that. They've got to think about, well, what do we do now? Because they are, as you referenced, they don't concede a lot of goals historically, so they're a side that sort of wants, if they're going to try and win a game or even just keep it, they'd rather keep it 0-0 than have to go 1-0 and chase and try and get the goal back. What I'm saying is that they don't like being in the losing position, and no one does, but it's especially hard for them. And for us to go and go bang bang, that was exactly what Liverpool needed in this game, I think, and to get it when we got it as well. As you said, Liverpool conceded sort of the best chance in that first half an hour, and then to go and basically put the game to bed, because what we've just been doing a preview show for Spartak for Tour Player, and you go, Spartak are probably in a similar boat. If Liverpool score first, you imagine Liverpool are going to score in every game now, so we're not conceding many chances from open play. The weaknesses we did have in general play don't seem to be raising their head as much as they are. So if Liverpool go ahead now, and I know there's Seville in the background, but I'm starting to see that as an anomaly for this Liverpool side. So if Liverpool go ahead, I think it's really hard for other sides. So if you go ahead and then put yourself into a 2-0 lead, for a side like Brighton, I think it's near impossible to change their game that much to get back into it.
I think what's interesting is that Liverpool obviously take the lead from a corner, and it's interesting that in the post-match comments, one of their defenders, can't remember his name now, but he was saying, we didn't have Liverpool down as being a threat from set pieces. It wasn't something we'd worked on, wasn't something we'd thought about. And even when you heard their manager talking,
it's naive that a bit though, isn't it?
It is a bit, because there's actually there's evidence there that we're quite good at them lately.
Two at Seville,
two
one
against
at
Sevilla, West Ham, Huddersfield as well. Yeah. There's quite a few goals in recent times from corners, but it wasn't something they'd obviously picked up on. And Emre gives us the lead, but that's obviously a good habit and a good habit to get into, but also interesting because, as I say, their manager was talking about them being this attacking force and being not dissimilar to Man City in the way they can tear a side apart, and obviously that's what they do with the goal that follows. What I thought was that interesting, Mel, as well, is two of the goals that we score there, counter-attacking goals, superb, moving the ball really quick between the front three. That's the stuff that we saw when we were fortunate enough to see them training in Hong Kong, isn't it? It was carbon copy stuff of what we saw that day, and also you saw the likes of Klopp and Linders stopping the play when they were training in that session and saying that's not quick enough. Yeah. You're not moving the ball quick enough. It needs to be less passes. It needs to be getting to his foot, and then he needs to be getting a shot off like that, quick as you can. And that's obviously something they drilled into them, and we saw it twice, executed perfectly.
Yeah, apart from the bravery, that was the other thing I really enjoyed, the fact that stuff from training and from the technical meetings that they have are, coming to fruition. And it's not just in this game, it's been a continuation, and I think it's only going to progress. Like you say, those counter-attacking goals, we saw the playbook for them in pre-season. The set-piece goals, before Emre scores his header, Firmino has a great chance, similar, and Emre knows, by the way, where that ball is coming. He knows where to start his run from. He anticipates it so well. Coutinho knows where he's putting the ball. That's all stuff that's happening on the training pitch. The free kick, again, is something that the analysts pick up, that their wall jumps pretty early, so wait for the wall to jump. Then he's obviously...
Milner reminded them as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and then you've obviously got to have the technique to do it, as Klopp said. And I think it was one of my favourite Mohamed Salah performances, because he doesn't score, but both those counter-attacking goals are created from the sheer fear he strikes into defenders, because when he's got the ball and he's running, they are all, for the first counter-attacking goal, there's 5 of them that he's taken out of the game, either directly, as in they're tracking his run, or indirectly, where they're in sort of a position where they should be, but they're all turning and they're focused on him. So he allows Coutinho and Firmino to have space and time to put Coutinho to put the ball in, Firmino to finish, and by the time he releases possession, it's too late for them. They're all out of position. They're all so fixated on him and how he could hurt them, that they've let the other 2 free. And for the second one as well, the second counter-attacking goal, you see the exact same thing. He's taken 2-3 players out the game, and then he plays the perfect pass to Firmino. And it was a joy to watch Liverpool be so effective in different ways.
I mean, have we reached a point yet, Dan, do you think, where we can start to trust this Liverpool side? Because we talked about this before, and it's not very long ago that we were talking about it, about how almost you don't know what this Liverpool side is and how it wins football matches and what that looks like. And it was so sort of in and out in terms of performances, in terms of results, in terms of lots of sort of frustrating draws, which remain a frustration when you look back at what we've done so far this season. But all of a sudden now, as I said right at the top of the show, 16 points from 18. I think it's 19 goals as well in that period. When you look at the attacking figures as well now, Salah obviously is the talk of everyone, 17 goals, 4 assists. Firmino's got 11 now, which is only 1 shy of what he managed for the whole of last season, and 5 assists. Coutinho, 6 goals, 6 assists, and Sadio Mane, who didn't even get a sniff at the weekend, 5 goals and 5 assists. So all of a sudden now, can you trust them? We stopped talking about defenders now, haven't we? And we're talking about attackers in general terms. About the wider world's conversation about Liverpool now isn't about Lovren, Klavan, Matip, the keeper. Everyone's talking about the attack being phenomenal.
They are, but it's not necessarily always going to be like that, is it? In a few games' time, in 1 game's time, I think one of them could drop a bollock again, and they're back to talking about the defence. We could concede from a corner, and that narrative comes back up. I don't think I completely trust them now. I know it's been a really good run, and I think we've always known that we've got a selection of excellent forwards, and it's good that they're all kind of working in tandem now and getting those numbers up, like you said. But the run that we've been on lately, we haven't really played anyone that's that good, have we? We've played Chelsea and Sevilla, who are teams that Liverpool are about the same level as every other team I would ostensibly expect Liverpool to beat.
Although Liverpool have struggled to do exactly that, so this is massive progress.
In reverse, aren't
because
we?
last season we had an excellent record against top teams. This season, not so much. We've had a better record against teams lower down the table this time, certainly. But I wouldn't say that I've got a lot more trust in them because of that. It was only a few weeks ago we were talking about them throwing leads away quite regularly. And we were saying how it must be very frustrating to be one of those forwards, because you're putting the goals in, you're playing brilliant football, you're scoring goals on the counter or scoring brilliant individual ones by yourself. But then someone who either isn't good enough or is bang out of form at the back is costing you week in, week out. Obviously, that's not the case at the minute, and it's a massive positive that it isn't at the minute, and they're an awful lot better than what they were a while ago. But I don't think I'll completely trust them until they've gone through an extended period where they've played various different kinds of team. And not necessarily won every game, but just showed the level of consistency. Because I think one of the most frustrating things about being a Liverpool fan, not this week specifically, obviously, but generally over the past probably few years, going from Rodgers' time into this one, is they're very capable of going on a run of 6-8 weeks or whatever, where you think they're absolutely scintillating and the best team in the country, and opposition managers are saying that it's the best attack they've come across and stuff like that. And then they'll have 3 or 4 weeks where you watch them and it's turgid and the defending's bad again. So I think until there's an extended period where there's a level of The resolute, basically, then I'd be fine with that. And I think Saturday was a big difference because when that Brighton goal goes in, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but never should have been a penalty in the first place. So it was not their fault. But once it goes in, after the Sevilla game, after the Watford game where they've given leads away, it wouldn't have been completely unforeseen for them to all panic a little bit and think, oh, we've let them back in the game here. They've got a bit of a head of steam and start panicking, but they didn't. They remained completely in control of the game. They slowed it down, I thought, quite a bit after the restart. Whereas in the first half, they'd used the kind of speed of the game to their own advantage, especially when we kicked back off and scored again. They showed quite a bit of nous to go. Let's just get a foot on the ball here for a little bit. Let's make sure the crowd doesn't get up. Let's make sure they don't start, pumping the ball into Glenn Murray in the box like they had done a couple of times. So I thought the game management, both from the bench, from the staff, and the players on the pitch, was an awful lot better. So that's a really positive sign.
Are you feeling more savviness around Liverpool in terms of the players and the manager? I mean, everyone's talking a lot about the changes now. 6 on Saturday. I think the previous 2 was 5 and 5 before that as well. Lots of people are getting minutes in the legs rather than a core of 11 or 12 or whatever. But also as well, the squad does look deeper, doesn't it? I mean, this time or not far off this time last year, you were looking at the bench a lot, and the options were Woodburn and Alexander-Arnold, and you were like, and we were having debates about whether you throw them lads in, and when they can play and when they can't play.
To change games as well.
Yeah, and then, but all of a sudden now you're looking at benches and you're going, well, that looks like a bench of a top club. But also, on the savviness thing, it's not just the changes. I mean, what Dan's talking about there, I think there has been a stylistic change as well, hasn't there? It's not all guns blazing for 90 minutes. It's all guns blazing in spells, and sometimes it can be quite conservative for spells as well.
Yeah, and that's where I'm taking the most positives. I think is that we have in the league we've took 16 from 18, but I don't think we're conceding many chances. The West Ham goal, for example, is just a great goal. The Willian goal,
fluke.
It's just I didn't want to call it a fluke, but it is a fluke, I suppose, from a good player. The Brighton goal at the weekend was never a penalty. So, I can be as knee jerk as the rest, as the best of them, But I think at the moment there's got to be a little bit of credit given to this Liverpool side. To be honest. They're scoring lots of goals. It seems to be on quite a solid foundation. They're not giving chances away. When as Dan references, I suppose, is when they do score, there's no panic. It seems a bit let on.
It got their crowd up.
It's less obvious, Gareth, if you know what I mean. I think we're less obvious in the fact that whereas Liverpool did concede a goal, they did panic. We're less obvious also in the setup, so we're not always 4-3-3. It can be this sort of diamondy midfield now. You go through. No one expects Klopp to do what he does at the weekend. I think all this little bit, Liverpool being a bit less predictable, is a good thing. And the fact that you can't pretty much just say, well, Liverpool's 11 is this, because we're trying to put 4 into 3 quite regularly, and that's a nice change. No, as much as I want to see. Sorry, go on.
No, all I was going to say was if we do dial back to when Liverpool left the horrible period, if you like, the January, was it 1 win in 9 or something like that? When the season goes off the rails, another thing that people said at that time was, rightly or wrongly, Klopp's being found out here. Everyone's worked Liverpool out here, and yet because he's doing what he's doing now, and because we've got the greater depth to the squad. Well, it's harder to find Liverpool out now, isn't it? Because you don't know what they're going to do.
The squad depth's helping them, definitely. I think that month or that 6-week period, whatever it was, around the time where the African Cup of Nations stuff with Matip and Mane and
Coutinho injured.
Yeah, the Coutinho injury, but just his learning. I think this whole season has been him practicing what he's learned from his previous time in the Premier League. I think he's learned a lot in firstly how to manage rotation a bit better. As I've said on our Under the Light show, so I'm repeat myself a little bit to those who are going to listen to that as well. But he's been a manager that's that's managed with the winter break. And Kopi says this on the review last week, and he's absolutely right, that he's been able to probably run lads solidly for 17 games in the league, go and have 4 weeks off, 5 weeks off, whatever it may be, and then go and do it again. Well, you can't do that here, and I think this is why he was, I think, he wants Thomas Lemar and Van Dijk on the last day, and no one's really going the other way. So we wanted an even bigger squad than the one he's got. And, maybe if you look at it now, with the problems that we had at the weekend with centre-half, maybe he's a little bit justified. We've seen Clavin quite a bit this year. I think he's maybe preferred that to be whoever it was he dropped between Lovren and Matip to play alongside Van Dijk. Imagine the attacking options of this side with Thomas Lemar plus the additional use of Adam Lallana as well, which we haven't got to see. So I think that's what he's trying to do. He's almost trying to just not burn out, because Liverpool did quite obviously burnt out last year. But what I'm pleased that the manager's done is not looked at these array of riches and almost had to feel like he has to apologise or let one of them go out the side door just because he can't get him enough games. He's actually got a squad there that can compete. That's the envy, certainly offensively, of most of the Premier League. And long may it continue going at it. You can do Lamar in January, go and do it. Why not? Because if you're competitive and you're winning things and you're putting runs together like this, then most of the time people will be happy anyway.
I mean, an interesting one from Klopp, Mel, after the game, when he says, he was talking about through the game and what he thought of it, and he was obviously absolutely delighted about those counter goals, which we mentioned. You could see that he was proud of them, if you like. But then he also did say to the media, I don't think it, talking about the game generally, I don't think it was world class or anything like that. It was just doing the job, which when you've won 5-1. Is almost quite the statement, but I can kind of see where he's coming from in that it wasn't absolute champagne stuff, was it? It was good. We beat Brighton. It was 5-1. Everyone's happy, but there were still some little moments where there are alternative realities that existed, if you like, if Brighton takes certain chances and things like that. But also as well, the focus is always going to be on the attacking lads after a 5-1. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about some good moments for the lads at the back. Mignolet, obviously, a very good save, which then leads to Liverpool getting on the attack and scoring that particular goal. Maybe not so good on some of his kicking, which the manager referenced as well. Although maybe, to defend them a little bit, maybe he was given a bit too much kicking at one point. Also, Trent's fantastic block, which is basically a goal-saving block. Fantastic.
Yeah, Wijnaldum as well.
Wijnaldum as well. And just in general, I thought Robertson did okay, but maybe not so well that, all the people who've been crying for him to be in the side were justified, if you like. I mean, to me, Albie comes straight back in again when he's ready to go. Emre does well, seems to like the game, watching it in front of him, being deeper. And a shout for Lovren as well, I guess, because, his head was absolutely gone at Spurs, and
I think that suits him though. Not having anyone else to rely on, like
just being the
all
deepest
action.
fella. Yeah.
What you don't have to worry about what's going on. Sorry to come across you, Mel. Is not having to worry about the guy on the right or sort of staying in line with him or something. It was just like that ball breaches that line of 4 in front of you. There, you go and sort it out. Yeah. I thought that was perfect for him.
Klopp also managed him really well, I think, in the aftermath of that, because that's potentially like Liverpool career ending, isn't it? When he hooks him on 30 minutes or whatever it is at Wembley. And then he took him out for a while. He had a niggle, didn't he, I think, which meant he didn't play for a bit. But then he brought him on with like a few minutes left of that West Ham game and we were coasting, and it was like, yeah, I'll go on and just get some minutes and you'll be all right. And he's kind of brought him back in slowly. Clavin played a few games. So I think he's done really, really well in terms of like reintegrating him and making him feel confident in his own abilities again.
It's the thing, isn't it, Mel, that, you can't, people, fans in particular, and, certain writers or whatever, I guess, when they're going to write a piece about Liverpool, they'll talk about things like, the Klopp revolution and all this sort of stuff. But you can't, you can't have that much of a take. You can't fix everything, is what I mean. Yeah. So, he's got to get performances out of people like Lovren, Mignolet, Moreno. Perhaps, you can argue, the counter argument is that maybe he's shown too much faith in some of those players, but the ones I've mentioned. But at the same time, you just can't change everything in a football club in like 1 or 2 transfer windows.
No.
You've got to manage the resources you've got. and he's getting stuff out of some of these lads. And defensively, they do look better now, don't they?
Yeah, he always talks about the journey and the process of development, and he says that too many people focus on the end, the destination where you have to go, but he said he's found throughout his managerial career that the process of getting there, and especially times when it's difficult and you have to pull yourself out of the difficult spell and strike back, is what he most enjoys. And he had it at Mainz. He spoke about the WhatsApp group that he still has with players from Mainz, where every now and every so often they'll talk about, remember this period when all this happened and this is what we had to do to come out of it. And he's, the fact that you can create that and have that together is what he loves. And, afterwards he was right. It wasn't what you think typically of a 5-1 performance, because there were really testing periods, both at the start of the game when they had to be patient, when they were 3-1 up and Brighton wanted more possession, which suited Liverpool because then they could counter, but they weren't, making the most of their counter opportunities then, and there was a little bit of pressure because of the leads that they had surrendered in recent games. But they deal with all that, and I think it's a continued learning, not just, I don't think it's Klopp only looking at last season and applying, better management skills to this season, but also game by game. Chelsea, he doesn't make subs early enough, and then at Stoke, he makes the subs that win the game, that give you balance, and then Salah comes on and immediately the pressure is reversed because he gives Salah enough time as well to do that. So I think it's game to game, and players as well are picking it up as well. It helps when, obviously, Moreno's had a really shocking game. Lovren's had a really shocking game, and we talk about his trust in players, but if he doesn't show either of them the support he does immediately afterwards, we're probably not looking at this phase that we're now so glowingly. And I mean, since Spurs, what's it been? 8 games in all competitions, 6 wins, 25 goals scored, 6 conceded, and 3 of them are in that ridiculous second half against Sevilla. So I think there's a lot to be positive about, because when Liverpool went through their mediocre period in the season, Klopp said, last year we had this in January, February. This year it's happening earlier, and every team will go through this phase. And now in the last 8 games, Liverpool have scored 6 goals, 7 times or something? 3 or more goals, 6 or 7 times. City, who have been absolutely flying, or, started the season on fire, the goals have reduced a little bit, and they're finding now they're grinding out the wins. And it's a cycle of a season that you can't have it all your way all of the time. You're going to be tested, and how you deal with that is genuinely what you're made of. And I think we've referenced it already. Liverpool went away from home to opponents that are quite difficult to break down, which in the past has been a really big issue for them. 1-5-1 without needing to bring on Sadio Mane, who last season, you looked at Liverpool lineups without Sadio Mane and you were genuinely concerned. And I think the fact that all of them are playing so well and so cohesively, it makes the rotation less of an issue, because you could slot Sadio Mane straight back in and you're laughing,
Yeah, I mean, it's good almost, I think, the way the narrative keeps shifting around, really, because, the other day we're talking about Salah, Mane, we've hardly talked about him, and yet some stats still exist that it was something like, if he's played in any game that he's played more than 40 odd minutes in for Liverpool, I think they've only ever lost 2 or something like that, which shows you how sort of key he's been to Liverpool. And yeah, right now he's not an absolute match winner, although he's brilliant at Stoke.
He's definitely got something going on in the background, I think, Mane, in terms of managing the injury or something. I was watching him against Stoke a bit, and he doesn't seem to have like he seems so jet-heeled last year, where he just can't let himself go, or he's not letting himself go.
He's great on Salah's goal, though.
Oh yeah, he is. But what I'm saying is, he was choosing his runs a bit more. Sorry, Mel. Go.
Imagine not being fully in rhythm because he's had that stop-start and still getting a goal, getting assist, hitting the post, ridiculous.
I believe he's our best player, Mane. I'm a great believer that he is the head, quite even head and shoulders our best player. I think he's the most important player we've got as well. But not having to rely on them so positive. Just picking up on what Mel said there as well, Gareth, is you talk about City in the sort of bigger picture. I think Guardiola is now is almost doing the opposite of what Klopp's doing in terms of the wider rotation thing. So I was gobsmacked the side he put out yesterday against West Ham. I was so surprised he went so strong. And don't get me wrong, it turns out to be a bit of a contest, but West Ham were 25-1 to win that game yesterday. I've never seen a Premier League game with stats like that. The draw was something like 15-1.
They took the lead.
But there's only really one player. There's only Fernandinho out of what I would say is not a full strength Manchester City side there yesterday. And then we're talking about Klopp, and he's almost rotating from day one, this year. So I wonder where Mel's talking about that Liverpool had their blip earlier in the season, whether Guardiola's trying to build up him, almost like looking at what Chelsea did last year, such a lead that they can almost limp to the title, that, Man United maybe go, well, they're 13 points ahead, let's try and do a bit in the Champions League here, it might appease someone, but we're pretty much set for top four. Whereas I wonder if Liverpool can keep this league form going. We're going into the Champions League break now, aren't we, after this game in the week? And what is it, 2 months off Champions League football now? It comes back in February. I wonder if this is the bit where Klopp is actually going, bigger picture is this is where we get back in the title race, or we at least get in the conversation with Man United, or we can maybe put Tottenham to bed or Arsenal to bed, who's, Tottenham are having a bit of a blip at the moment. Is that going to be slightly more prolonged than you'd expect? You think Tottenham are a good side, but there's no reason this can't go on for another 3 or 4 games. So I wonder whether he's put everything to sort of pick his battles where everyone's maybe at the weakest, where, there's sides like West Brom and Brighton who aren't used to playing 3 in a week that are going to be forced to do that, where Liverpool can actually go almost at full strength in most of these games and pick up a load of points and have our good run where our poor run was last time. And I think he's calculated this a little bit. I know a lot of people see him as quite a cool manager, Klopp, but I actually think he's a bit like a mad scientist as well. And I wonder whether he's sort of calculated his run for this period now. He's learned his lesson, and what he wants to do is take December and January on, where everyone else maybe start to falter.
What I was trying to get to before is that, as we're going into this period, is that there are so many different players, though, that can win a game for you in our team. So, on Saturday, Coutinho gets all the headlines. He scores a great free kick, and then he forces that 5th as well. But also, going on some fantastic runs, looking like his old self, and looking like a player that can win matches for you. And obviously, he's last season's top scorer as well, which seems to have now gone a bit amiss. But at the same time, there's him, there's Salah, and then what's it? When you get off the pitch, when the game's finished, actually the manager doesn't talk that much about Coutinho. He's raving about Firmino and his work rate, and he calls him a little annoying. But what he means by that is just being a pest towards their defenders. He was going on about the way he just nicks a toe in here and their defence from the front. A bit rushy style, if you like, for the Alderasses like myself. But do you think he remains sort of underrated, Dan, Firmino? Because he's clearly rated by the manager, probably to the extent of maybe he's one of, if not his favourite player in the team. Because if you listen to the way they talk about each other, Firmino about Klopp about Firmino, it's both sides. It's very gushing. I mean, Firmino was doing an interview the other day saying how much Klopp's helped him, how close he is to him, how he was glad that he knew what type of player he was and all that. Do you think he's appreciated, though, by us as fans and by the wider football world? I mean, as I said before, his stats for the season are stacking up. 11 goals and 5 assists is decent.
Klopp's spoken a few times, hasn't he, about how when he was at Dortmund, he always wanted to bring them. And I know that managers often say that about players, and you think, I'm not so sure that that's true. But I think it really is with him because, as you say, he is so kind of not over the top, but so enthusiastic in his praise of him so often that it's almost as though he feels like he has to make people aware of how good he is. Like it's his own personal mission. Certainly, I think people must hate playing against him. Defenders, I think, yeah, they'll hate playing against, Rooney when he was at his peak, Aguero when he's at his peak and stuff like that. And Firmino, I don't think ever is going to get the kind of goal scoring return that those players would. But the stuff that he does off the ball and the stuff that he does to bring the wide players in so much, he must be really, really frustrating because you've constantly got to have your eye on him. He's really strong for his size as well, and I know there's like the stereotype of running yards in your head and all that sort of stuff, but I think his intelligence and his positioning means that he does get an advantage where maybe his pace isn't bad, certainly, but he's not a lightning player like the two other sides of him. But his positional awareness, his awareness of the way defenders are, does help him get that little bit of an advantage in the first place, I think. I don't believe that fans of other clubs are really aware of, or they don't agree, I don't think, with the Liverpool supporters' perception that he's a great player. But I think that's just because he's not a match of the day type player. I don't think you'd watch highlights of that match at the weekend and pick him out of the front three or the entire Liverpool 11 go, he was brilliant, even though obviously he scores and that and he's involved in everything. I think you'd look more at, Coutinho scores a spectacular free kick that's really clever. You probably look at Salah's pace and the run that he's on. You'd look at him more if you were a fan of whoever else. So I think as long as he has these kinds of, because his goals tend to come in bursts, or that's what it seems like anyway. They stack up over the course of a season, but I think if you go back and look through it, there'll always be, a month where he hasn't got one, and then a month where he maybe gets 4 or 5 in a row. And that's not to say that he's not doing good things in the month where he's scoring, because he's probably, even if he's not getting assists as well, he's probably allowing everyone around him to score quite a few more. So I see your point about like his individual goal scoring stats and stuff, and they are really good and they're a big improvement. But in terms of measuring Firmino's success, I don't really think that's precisely what I'd go off come May, come June when we're finishing all competitions. I think he's more kind of a subjective player than that. He's not someone who you'd go, all right, he's our out-and-out centre forward. He's playing most games. How many did he score in all competitions? Because his role in the team isn't that.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than that. And I think you can tell as well, and it was certainly the case last season, it's a little bit less now, but you can really tell when he's missing because we play in a very, very different way. So at Stoke was really interesting because no one would look at Dom Solanke and think he could play like Firmino. But he was basically told to play an awful lot like Firmino in that Stoke game, I thought, in that he was coming deep for the ball sometimes. He was getting involved with midfield players and players wide from him. So I think, whereas last season you had like Origi who couldn't do that, just simply couldn't do it. He might have been more of a goal scorer than Solanke or whatever, but he simply couldn't play like Firmino could. And whenever we were playing Divock Origi up front instead of Firmino, you were very aware that there was like a big sort of tactical change. Everyone around him had to adjust. So I think Klopp's kind of settled now that he wants Firmino in that position, and if he hasn't got Firmino, he wants someone who can play as much like him as possible, and that's the most glowing endorsement that you could give him.
I think if there was like a magic card and there was a player you could play in every single game, if you're Klopp, I think he's the one he picks. I honestly think he does.
But he dropped him at Chelsea though.
Yeah, but
he was sort of forced into that though, wasn't he? Because he'd played him so much and he'd gone and played for Brazil, and it was like he picked that one to go, maybe we can do without him there. And we spoke about it on the show the other week. We maybe disagree with that, but once he'd put himself in that position, I don't think he'd have wanted to leave Firmino out of that match. I think it's literally just he thought it's going to have to be now.
Also, I think Chelsea may be a side that are maybe less panicked by what he does and what he off the ball. Christensen just oozes class. He's not going to make an individual error. I don't imagine he's not going to make many in his career by the look of him. I wonder if that game whether he thought it might be a game of few chances. These give very little away, and that sometimes with a lad like Sturridge, if one chance falls in the box, it could be a goal. So that was what I was thinking on that. Also, maybe getting into Sturridge's head a little bit, like when January comes. Well, look at the opportunities I've given you. Chelsea are one of them. Wouldn't be surprised in the bigger picture whether he even plays at the weekend. So maybe that. But from a Firmino thing, for you to say that he's already got what he got last year, did you say?
One off.
What he's one off. And I would say he's gone more under the radar this year. Obviously, what Mo Salah's doing in goal scoring terms is phenomenal. But I wouldn't have guessed that's how many goals he had this year. But as Dan says, I suppose it's he does get his goals in little bursts.
Do you think he's improved? Because I hear less, and it's only what I'm hearing, but I hear less people saying he can't finish. A lot of people saying he can't finish not so long ago.
Yeah, I think it's the reason Klopp advocates for Firmino so much is one, obviously, he genuinely believes what he's saying about him. And if you speak to anyone in the squad, and if they had to pick who their favourite player is, you'll hear all of them. There's a difference between who's the most technical or who's the most skilled player you've seen and who's your favourite player or who do you think is the most important in the squad. And Firmino is the answer to the second question. Coutinho is the answer generally to the first about who's the most technical. But I think the other reason he feels he needs to advocate for him so much is because there is this old school mentality that, and especially if you're watching any of the review shows and most of the players say this a lot, but you have to have a traditional number 9. You have to have a Harry Kane in your team, sort of. And Liverpool don't want to play that way because when you are so dependent on one individual, and we've had this with Daniel Sturridge post Luis Suarez, where we were geared to play a certain way, and when you took Sturridge out of that squad through injury, Liverpool suffered because the other players that they bought were sort of traditional number 9s who didn't really fit and didn't have the pace, didn't have the work ethic to match with with the other attacking players. And what Firmino does at the moment is he's a very good player individually, but he enables all the strengths and skill sets around him to shine more when he's on the pitch because he does do that much off the ball. I think he's been phenomenal. And, Klopp said the other day when I think he gets annoyed when one player is picked out too much. That happened last season a bit with Coutinho, where he was always the topic of conversations after the game. It's happened now with Salah, where he even tries to divert the question away and point to other people who have done well, and it is because it's a collective effort. I mean, at Stoke, Mane was also so pivotal, but Salah comes off the bench and he gets those 2 goals, and everything's about him. Coutinho scores a free kick and stuff, so it's forgotten how much Firmino did in the build up to the goal. Coutinho's involved in all 5 goals, by the way, on Saturday, but I think he does like this communal sense of things, which is why when Salah scored the 2, he references Mane. When Coutinho does something, he references Firmino. He does like to give everyone credit. The other day he gave Albi credit as well. What game was that? The Chelsea game. After his performance in Sevilla. Yeah. So I don't think it's. I think Firmino is one of his favourites, but I don't think he does it based on that. I think he does it to share some education that it doesn't always have to be the typical traditional way you think it has to be. And Liverpool, because they've got so many threats, they're so hard to defend against because Brighton's mistake was they were so focused on Salah when he was running at them that they allowed Coutinho and Firmino to cause damage as well.
Yeah, I think he's such a philosophical manager that he needs the sort of team think thing to work because that's what he needs to sort of preach in the press conferences, what he's practicing behind the scenes. So I get what Mel's saying in terms of if you say Mo Salah was good, yeah, but did you see Coutinho? That's the way he sort of works. But I think the truth is, if this is next July or something like that, and you're offering Klopp the opportunity to keep Coutinho for the next 5 years, or then you flip it on the side, but you've got to lose Roberto because of that. I honestly don't think he goes for it. As good a player as I think Coutinho is, I think there's a certain level of manager who appreciates that type of player, and I think it's almost like a high level manager where you go, why isn't he playing with a Harry Kane? I almost think like a Harry Kane type number 9 out is almost now for the more obvious manager, the slightly more basic manager, you know, an Allardyce, and I wanted to throw that dig in there. Yeah, but I honestly do feel like you see Rafa finds something in Dirk Kuyt that not everyone that doesn't watch Liverpool every week, or even those who do watch Liverpool every week, don't really appreciate. And I think these quite intense tactical managers will go, yeah, but he does all of the bit that a number 9 should do, but I also think he does all of these other things that not everyone can attribute in terms of stats or expected goals or whatever nonsense people now look at. I just think it's one of
all the best for saying that. I'm not getting about 1 million responses on Twitter.
Come at me, Paul Senior one. But I'm all for it. You know, I think he's found these things he likes in certain players, and you see these pundits on the telly, and they sort of when things are bad, they question these players because they haven't watched them enough, quite frankly. And I think he's the type of player that epitomises why Jürgen Klopp is so good.
Well, on Jürgen Klopp, just to finish on this, I wanted to touch on some nonsense because I like getting stuck into nonsense.
Is this prick of the week?
And so this is this is look at this prick now. This is the non-handshake with Chris Hughton that's caused some fuss. Ian Wright has a pop first off on Match of the Day on Saturday. Basically just say, you know, Klopp's getting up people's noses with the way he acts on the touchline and blah, blah, blah. That's now been taken on by not only a couple of journalists who have seen doing it, but also the one, the only, the wonderful Gareth Crooks. Now I'm gonna read this out for you because I just think it's amazing. And go where you want after I finish reading it out, but get on this, right? So he says, losing 5-1 is no fun, especially when Reds manager Jürgen Klopp is fist-pumping every goal and celebrating with his staff like it's the final of the Champions League. I understand the importance of winning, but this was Brighton. What I do take exception to is any manager being kept waiting to shake hands once a game is finished, while his opposite number finishes hugging and kissing his players and staff in celebration of their victory. I sense this was exactly what happened after the final whistle and why Chris Hughton tore a strip off Klopp immediately after the game, and quite rightly. What is happening to the traditions of this great game? Has winning and money destroyed everything we hold dear? The convention is we shake hands immediately after a game because it brings closure to the occasion, and it starts with the managers. The game's conventions are bigger than any manager or player, and if either can't be bothered to perform the duty, I suggest they find another profession that can afford their bad manners.
Right. Well,
made up with how you got into character there. That was Oscar-worthy.
Well, why is Gareth Crooks still a pundit on football?
I think he's great value, you know.
I think he's
for bullshit like this.
What?
If you take him seriously, then yeah.
He's a parody, isn't he? I mean,
yeah.
Why the BBC are employing and paying him money to give his opinion on football? I don't. Yeah, what's Jürgen Klopp meant to do? Like it's the Champions League final.
Forgetting Garth though, because it's not just him. And like I say, it's Ian Wright and a couple of others as well. They've had the pop. And Chris Hughton seemingly did have a cob on. So
I'd want him to. If I'm a Brighton fan, I'd want him to have a cob on.
Yeah, A, what is the problem, and B, why are we asked, and C, why would Klopp be asked? I mean, all of this idea that there's some kind of unwritten rule and convention that you can't celebrate goals. Well, don't we enjoy that? Don't we like seeing our manager?
It's the aim of the game, innit? Is that let's stop enjoying winning and scoring goals.
But that's the thing. People complain all the time that there's no passion in the game.
But then we'll say the handshakes are more important.
It's why the likes of him was probably saying when we were appointing Klopp, this is exactly what this league needs. You know, a new manager that's going to bring passion to the touchline and all that. And they get it, and they become fucking conservative, Mr. English gentleman again. You know, fuck off.
I also completely detest anyone who says things like it's only Brighton, because if Liverpool had lost that game, it would have been the biggest travesty. It wouldn't have been it's only Brighton. It would have been the biggest travesty.
If I'm Brighton, I'm more offended by that than I am as a Liverpool fan. It's only Brighton. Well, we got into that game. We're 9th in the Premier League. We are punching above expectation despite all the things that have gone in the past with the ground and stuff like that. This is only Brighton that's achieving.
It's so ridiculous.
I'd be so pissed off as a Brighton fan going, You know what? You're expected to beat Brighton 5-1. No one who's beat Brighton 5-1.
There's actually serious concerns in the game. You know, like things that go on at academy level and like the imbalance in terms of gender equality in the game and not enough representation of not enough diversity, I should say. And then you take something like that, like passion of celebration of goals, and you make it an issue as though it's killing the game. It's utterly bewildering that somebody can think that it's that important when you have all this other stuff going on.
It's literally his personality, though, isn't it, Dan? I mean, isn't it literally what the fella's like? You know what I mean? But like when we're watching him like run up and down at Dortmund and Mainzer and jumping into crowds and beating his chest and all that, everyone loved him then, didn't he? So is it just a problem because he's Liverpool's manager now?
I don't know, because I think he's done stuff as Liverpool manager before that people have found funny. I think people just sort of pick and choose. I think Gareth Crooks is very aware that he gets paid on the basis that people click on his column. And loads of people will have clicked on his column because they've seen this and they think it's bullshit. And I'm sure the fella knows it's bullshit. It's why when he does his teams of the week, he picks about 8 strikers. Because he knows people will click on it and go, yeah, he's playing Kevin De Bruyne centre half here. I'm going to send this to 3 of me mates, and then he gets more dough.
We played Gini Wijnaldum centre half, so maybe he's forward thinking.
maybe he is. Maybe he's the next great international coach.
So, quick survey then. Dan, do you want Klopp to change?
No.
Paul?
Fuck off, Gareth.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, we'll stick with Klopp as he is.
They couldn't be bigger polar opposites, the managers, though. Chris Hughton is the most quiet fella in the world. Yeah. Fuck that. I'm all up for what Klopp brings, I suppose. As I said, these are the fellas that moan about the game being dumbed down by the media and stuff like that. They're the problems, and the money in football, I should have said. This is what you want. This is passion. This is a fella who still loves football despite the £7 million salary or whatever it is he's on. That's the type of manager that we want in the Premier League, surely to God.
I think as well, at some point, the media have taken issue with the personality of every single Liverpool manager since Benitez, bar Hodgson, which probably tells you more than enough. But yet, he took exception to Rodgers and the things he used to say in press conferences. When Kenny Dalglish was being a bit sort of punchy and feisty with him, they got pissed off with him. They were furious with Benitez constantly for the way he treated press conferences and stuff like that. So, yeah, maybe it's just a case of they have a set way of what they think is the right way of doing things and they don't like it when people conform.
Yeah, so Ian Wright, Gareth Crooks, anyone else? Fuck yeah. That's been the Anfield Wrap.